This kitchen fire could quickly get out of hand, but luckily, there is a secret weapon that we all have in our kitchens that can save your life. Now, luckily, I've got some firefighter friends looking out for me here in the fire test kitchen so that I can show you how safely. Grease fires can be started by a bunch of things, including throwing frozen food directly onto hot oil, or when the cooking oil itself just gets too hot. And when they start, they spread very quickly. Cooking fires are the leading cause of home fires in the U.S., and people aged 65 and older are at greater risk of dying in one than the rest of the population. So, what happens if one breaks out in your home? Don't panic. Here's how to put out a grease fire safely. You may be tempted to take the pot off of the stove and put it in the sink or outdoors or something. Bad idea. Unfortunately, that just spreads the flames around. So what should you do? Grab an oven mitt to protect your arm and the pot lid, which you should always keep nearby. And then you just kind of slide it in, staying as far away as possible, and smother the flames. And I was a little nervous, but looks like it worked. Woohoo! Cutting off the oxygen supply is the best way to kill the flames. The key is to make sure the lid fully covers the pan, and don't remove it until the pan has completely cooled down. By the way, a baking sheet or another pan that you've got nearby will also work. Anything metal that will deprive the fire of oxygen. You can also use a Class K fire extinguisher. That's the best type for grease fires. Ideally, you'd check the label in advance to see what kind of extinguisher you have. Some may not be safe for all kitchen fires. If you remember nothing else from this video, never, ever use water on a grease fire. You see, water and oil repel each other, which will result in a scary, explosive fireball that shoots up from your stove. I am not kidding. If for some reason the fire does not go out or it starts to spread, get everybody out of the building safely and then call 911. For more safety tips, visit aarp.org/home-family.
Hello, my name is Teresa Collins, and I am an Executive Council member for AARP Illinois. AARP, a nonprofit, nonpartisan member organization, has been working to promote the health and well-being of older Americans for more than 60 years. AARP is proud to represent all those who are 50 plus in Illinois and our 1.7 million members. And we thank you for the opportunity to be your wise friend and fierce defender. Our mission is to enhance the quality of life for all as we age, leading positive social change and delivering value to members through advocacy, service, and information. When making changes to your diet, you don't need to go it alone. It's preferable to get some help from your primary care doctor or a dietitian. Your doctor can check your vitamin and cholesterol levels to make sure you're safely embarking on your new way of eating. A dietitian can assess your needs and create a meal plan that's not only tailored to your goals, but also sustainable over the long term. Please enjoy today's class, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Hello, AARPers. I am Amy, and coming in from Morton, Illinois. Today we are going to be making a peasant dish. It is shepherd's pie. So we have a lot of flavors that we're going to be packing into this neat little dish. And there's a couple ways you can prepare it, and there's a couple little hacks or shortcuts that you can take if you want to make the process of putting this together a little more streamlined and a little faster. I know we all have time issues. Not everybody has an abundance of time on their hand. Especially if we're caring for somebody, some of these shortcuts may be right up your alley. So let's start with the starting point. Okay, I'm going to make mashed potatoes. I have diced and seasoned and parboiled some potatoes. To this, I am going to add a whisked egg, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and some butter and some cream. You could also use half and half. You could use milk as well that has been warmed up slightly. And I'm going to add that to my pot. right here. Not even going to dirty a bowl. I'm just going to do this right in the pot. I'm going to grab my handy dandy potato masher and I'm going to start mashing my potatoes. If this doesn't look like fun to you, if you don't have any aggression you need to get out on anything, you can always use an instant mashed potato. I know there are some that you can buy in the store for about $1 a bag or a little packet that are really delicious. And a lot of them have some different flavors. You could get roasted garlic. You could get some with cheese already mashed in. But here we go. We're just going to keep mashing these potatoes until they get fairly smooth. I don't mind a couple of lumps here and there, but again, I definitely want a mashed potato. And I can feel my face getting red already, and I think I just hit the cameraman with some flying potatoes. So we're going to move on from there. That looks good. All right. So our next step is going to be to preheat our oven to 400 degrees. I've already got that going for us, and now I'm going to work on some vegetables. So what we have for our shepherd's pie is I've got half an onion, I've got a carrot, I have 1 clove of garlic, I also have some fresh rosemary and some fresh thyme that I pulled out of the garden today. So we'll deal with these one at a time. So I'm going to take my onion, I'm going to keep the root end, the little hairy end intact. I'm going to cut the top end off of the onion, and that gives me a nice little corner, a nice little edge to start peeling that skin off with. And that should come off pretty darn quick. There we go. And I'm going to dice this. I want to keep a reasonable size dice because I want chunks of onion in my shepherd's pie. I don't want just the flavor of onion. I want to actually see and have the texture. So I'm going to start by making some horizontal cuts in my onion that go back to the root end but don't go through it. I'm going to come up one. I'm going to do the same thing. I might do one more, but I'm not going to do any more than that because I want some chunky onion. This is rustic. This is not fine French food. And then I'm going to come through. I'm going to make some vertical cuts. Again, I'm going to go back to the root end, but I'm not going to go through it. I'm going to make a couple cuts here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and turn that. And now I'm going to cut straight down.
Smart speaker can tell you the latest news or remind you to take your medication. These devices can also record everything they hear. How do you protect your privacy when using a smart device? Smart speakers are always listening for their wake word, so each time you call out to your device with Alexa or OK Google, it records what you say. It might also do that when you say something that sounds similar. And once you issue a command, it records that too and saves it in its database. If you want to be sure your smart device isn't picking up sensitive information, check for a physical setting like a button or a switch that stops it from listening. Review your in-app privacy setting to see if recordings are automatically stored and for how long. If you use your smart device to shop or read emails out loud, consider adding a PIN or passcode for an extra layer of protection. For more technology tips, go to aarp.org/tech.
Hello, my name is Sonia Gibbons-Reed, and I am the State and Community Engagement Analyst for AARP Illinois. AARP, a nonprofit, nonpartisan member organization, has been working to promote the health and well-being of older Americans for more than 60 years. AARP is proud to represent all those who are 50 plus in Illinois and our 1.7 million members, and we thank you for the opportunity to be your wise friend and fierce defender. Our mission is to enhance the quality of life for all as we age, leading positive social change and delivering value to members through advocacy, service, and information. Did you know an overall healthy diet is best, but a few foods stand out for their brain health benefits? These standouts, plus a few boosters, can keep you healthy as nutritional needs change with age. Berries, dark green leafy vegetables, seafood, nuts and seeds, cottage cheese, beans, water, and avocados. We are hopeful today's cooking demonstration is helpful in your cooking journey. Please enjoy today's cooking class, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Hey everyone, they're at AARP Land. Welcome back to another demo. I'm Chef Amanda coming to you live from Morton, Illinois, where today we're going to Louisiana to explore some New Orleans or Cajun and Creole food. So we're going to do one of our favorites that we like to do around here, our quickie red beans and rice. And then we're going to also make some pralines and wash that down for dessert. So a soup, hearty, made with really nice quality ingredients, nice and warm, sticks to the bones. This is going to be a perfect dish not only for our caretakers to have ease in making, it's also going to freeze great, but it's got a lot of great flavor. And who doesn't love a soup when they're not feeling well? So this goes out for our caregivers. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to do is get our rice going because I want it to be nice and fluffy and have time to rest when we eat it. I am doing a jasmine rice here, and so it's just a long grain white rice, but really whatever you want to make is fine. Minute rice is fine, brown rice, whatever you have. So I've got a cup of rice here, and then in my water bowl here, I've got a cup and a half of water that I've got boiling, ready to take on my rice. And then I stuck a couple bay leaves in there, really just for flavor. And so we're going to stir that into boiling water. We're going to give it a stir. I'm going to add a pinch of salt. Maybe 2, because I like salt. And I'm going to let this come back up to a boil. And then I'm going to turn it down to a simmer. And then I'm going to pop the lid on it, and then I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes. And we're going to let that go. At the end of 15 minutes, I'm going to turn off my timer, and I'm going to turn off the heat, but I'm not going to remove the lid yet. I like to let the rice rest for about 5 to 10 minutes, which kind of poofs up the granules of rice and makes it not nice and fluffy instead of kind of clumped together. So we're getting this up to a boil. We're almost back to a rolling boil. So rolling boil being big bubbles on top of the water, simmer being small bubbles underneath the water. All right, there we go. Now we turn back down to a simmer, and we let that work its magic. Hannah, can you set me a timer for 15 minutes, please? Alrighty, next let's get started on our red beans and rice. So we're definitely going to embrace some traditional New Orleans flavor here with our andouille sausage. You can get that at your local butcher shop or even just regular grocery stores anymore. Carry an andouille sausage, which means it's been spiced and smoked and added in some of those Cajun flavors like paprika and cayenne pepper. Also going into our red beans and rice, we're going to have, of course, the Holy Trinity. So this is the Holy Trinity in Cajun cooking, very similar to a French mirepoix, which contains white onion, celery, and carrots. This one here is going to be green pepper, celery, and onion. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my heat. I've got about a tablespoon of veggie oil in my pan already, and I'm just going to heat that until it's nice and hot. And while it's warming up, I'm going to cut down my sausage. And I'm just going to do the sausage in some nice thin slices. If you're not into spicy sausage, you could find like a Polish sausage or something similar like that, a chicken and apple sausage, and cut the spice out of this dish. But as we know, New Orleans is known for its flavor and its cuisine, and also to have not just a lot of flavor, but also a little bit of spice as well. I find this dish to be very comforting. And it's great to make this dish for somebody when they're not feeling well. It sticks to the ribs, but it's also nice and warm in spices and temperature. All right, sausage is going into the pan. We should start to hear that sizzle. I'm just going to lay it out so it's nice and single layer. And this sausage is already cooked, so I'm really just trying to get some good crispy texture on it, and also to cook some of the brown bits onto the bottom of the pan to create a fond, which is a term in French cooking, which is the basis of New Orleans cooking. So I feel like we really want to identify with those things today and make sure that we embrace them, because we're really building flavor into the pot and into the pan, which is going to stew all the way through our nice hearty soup. Next, I've got an onion here. I'm just going to cut off the top of the onion. I'm going to leave the root part intact. And then I'm going to lay it flat. Then I'm going to cut through the root, which makes my onion a lot easier to peel. Onion is an aromatic, just like garlic. So we're going to want to add that in the beginning of our dish so that it adds flavor to the fat that we're cooking with and then passes that flavor along on our cooking journey today. All right, after I've got my onion nice and cleaned and cut into 2 halves, I'm going to do a horizontal cut back to the root without going through it. And I'll make a couple of these. The more cuts you have, the smaller your end result will be. Whoop. After I've gone back to the root, I'm going to switch up my knife here because I have a smaller onion. We're going to make a series of vertical cuts, moving all the way around the onion. This is kind of a funky shaped onion today. Perfect. And then when we go down, we've got a really nice, even dice. No tears. Alrighty. Sausage is already starting to smell great in our pan, so we're going to give it a little bit of a stir so it can release some of its spices into our oil. I'm going to make a little opening here in the center of my pan, push my sausage to the outside, and this is going to get ready to accept my vegetables. That way they go into that naked space there with direct contact to the middle of the burner. First we'll get our pepper and celery cut up, and then we will get it all in the pan. Now, if you wanted a little extra heat in this dish, you could certainly add jalapenos. You could add a bit more spice later when we add the cayenne. We're going to keep it a pretty mild red beans and rice today. Now that I got my pepper all cleaned, I'm going to give another stir to my sausage over here. Oh, that smells amazing. And I'm going to try and cut my pepper here about the same size as I cut my onion. That way my veggies are nice and uniform in the pan, and they kind of cook at the same pace. So again, white onion, green bell pepper, and celery are known as the Holy Trinity in Cajun and Creole cooking. And they can be found in most dishes like gumbo, etouffee, got my nice diced bell pepper, and then we're going to add some celery last. All right, now I'm getting those crispy bits on the bottom of the pan. Maybe Amy can get us a close-up of that. I know that's going to equal some majorly awesome flavor later. So we want some brown bits on the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and turn down my heat to low while I finish up my veggies. And again, make that little opening in the center because we're about to start adding all of that in. Celery next, I like to do in some nice long strips first. And then down to a dice that kind of mimics the size of our onion and our bell pepper. And last but not least, we've got some cloves of garlic here. I've already diced up a couple of those ahead of time, but we will go ahead and show how to do our last one here. Got a nice big clove of garlic. I'm just going to give it a smash. And then that peel comes off really nice and easily. And then from there, I like to take off that little brown end spot. We'll go into slices first, and then into a nice mince. And now we're ready to start loading our vegetables into the pot. Perfect. All right, we're going to start with our onions and peppers. Give them a little stir. Get them all mixed in that sausage fat there. And we just want to get a little bit of caramelization and color on our veggies. And then we'll start adding in the broth. We've got a homemade chicken stock for our broth today here, but I've also made this with pork stock. I've made it with beer. So again, looking to get a little more color on our veggies, I'm going to go ahead and add in my celery now. And also my garlic. And we'll give that a little stir. Oh, it's just smelling absolutely amazing in here. A little view of the pan going on. Made sure to cut my sausage pretty nice and uniform, a lot like my veggies. That way everything's cooking at the same rate. All right. Next, we're going to add in some seasoning. Oh, and I've got the rest of my garlic. I almost forgot. Can't miss out on that. So in Cajun cooking, we can usually find pretty much the same seasonings over and over. And so I've got a nice little progression of spices here. If Amy wants to get a shot of these here, we've got in our little bowl here some smoky paprika, some leaf oregano, some cayenne pepper, some leaf thyme, some garlic powder, some onion powder, and some black pepper. So as you can see, there's a mix of smoke and spice there, and also some really aromatic herbs too, like thyme and oregano. Red beans themselves, not a ton of flavor going on there, so we kind of have to add it so that we've got a lot of flavor moving through our broth. So I'm just going to mix that up a little bit. I made my spice blend right in a bowl together. I'm going to equally mix it, and then we'll season it over this meat and veggies. Give that a nice stir, and this will continue to add to our delicious fond of brown bits that we're cooking onto the bottom of the pan. That really amped up the Cajun smells that are coming out of this pot. All those seasonings. You'd find the same seasonings in a gumbo. Now, as you can see, we've got a lot of bits that have cooked onto the bottom of the pan. This is our spices. This is the caramelization of our meat, the caramelization of our veggies, and we want all of that. That's why this is a great one-pot dish. We want to cook all that onto there because that is the flavor. Caramelization of any food brings flavor. And I like that the veggies are a little crispy still, but also cooked down and have a bit of color on them. All right, next we're going to add in a cup of our chicken stock. We're going to reserve a half cup. And I like the chicken stock to be cold here, or pork stock, beer, whatever you're doing, because when you pour cold liquid into a hot pan, it's going to be more efficient at getting all of the brown bits off the bottom from that shock of temperature. We're able to scrape those bits up easily, and they come right off of the side of the pan here even. And while you could do a dry bean and cook those down first, or cook this for a long time, or even in the Instapot, we really like to just use a canned bean because this is a quick beans and rice. We don't always have several hours to make something from a dry bean. And we're going to bring our stock up. I'm using this wooden utensil to scrape all these brown bits off of the bottom here. Some good smells going on there. Next in, we're going to put in our beans. Just want to make sure I got everything in there. All right. So our first 2 cans of beans, we have rinsed and drained and kept in their whole form. So those are going in next. Going to stir that all around. And these are already nice and tender because we're using a canned bean. So that adds to the quickness of this dish. I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of my chicken stock now. We're going to turn this back up to medium. Is that our rice timer there? All right, perfect. So our rice timer has gone off 15 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and turn the rice off. I like to just give it a quick peek just for my own personal pleasure. But notice I didn't lift the lid. I want to keep all that steam inside. I want to make that rice nice and fluffy. So I gave it a peek just to make sure it had absorbed all the water. Real quick, 1 second, lid back on, and now we're going to rest that rice until we're ready for it, or at least 5 minutes. Oh, okay, I've got some great red beans and rice action going on here in the pan. I think that's it. Yeah. And then the very last thing we need to add is our final can of red beans. And so we like to keep 2 cans whole. That way it looks very visually appeasing in there. And then our 3rd can of beans, we ran through a blender to puree it a little bit. So if you've ever made black bean soup, this is a similar technique where we're just using the thickened beans with the juice that it came in, and we puree it and we use it as a thickener. It's going to add some body and richness to our red beans and rice. And again, when I make my black bean soup, I do the same way. I leave some cans of beans whole in the soup, puree some beans on the side to bring some body and some richness. Look at that. So it went from stock and liquid in the pan to this delicious hearty soup. And again, we were going for stick to the bones here, and I think we've really achieved that. So we're going to pop some foil on this. And I'm going to cook it at a pretty high temp because I'm standing next to it and we don't have 30 minutes in our video today. But we'll let it cook for about 15 minutes. I'm just scraping the sides of the pan right now and getting any of those brown bits that cooked onto there. So I can make sure all that flavor ends up in my red beans and rice. All right. There we go. So we will let this go at about a medium-high heat for about 15 to 20 minutes or until we're ready to serve it up. And while that's going, we're going to make some pralines. So I'll put this over here, a little towel on it to remind me not to touch it. And then we'll scoot over here and we're going to make some of the New Orleans classic dessert, a caramel praline, which is basically caramel made in the pan, adding in some whole pecans, or some people do crushed pecans, and then turning those out onto a sheet pan to make a really nice little caramel and pecan flavored cookie that hardens in no time at all. So I've got a pan here and I've got it with a caramel thermometer attached. I've got some white cane sugar here and a little bit of butter. Let's see, 1.5 cups of white sugar and 6 tablespoons of butter. And I'm going to add that into the pan. And we're going to turn the pan on and get this going. And we are aiming for a temperature of 240 degrees on our candy thermometer. So I can actually wait a little bit to put that in there, but it looks about like this. And it's going to tell you where the caramel stages are marked on the inside of the thermometer. And so I've also got a little glass of ice cold water here. And we can use this to kind of gauge our caramel and if it's done, if it's going to hold its shape once it hardens. I've also got this handy dandy nifty thermometer, which also doubles as a rubber spatula to stir your caramel with as it comes together. And it reads the temperature on the side. So we'll get this sugar going first, and then we also have some brown sugar here, 3/4 cup. We've got a mix of light and dark, but whatever you like is good. Hello everyone, we are back. We had a little thermometer malfunction, so pardon that. So let me bring you up to speed. We've added all of our ingredients, that's our brown sugar, our white sugar, our vanilla, and our milk, into our pan we stirred in our butter, if I didn't say that. We stirred that until our butter melted into our sugars to produce a caramel. This at this time looks very, very grainy, and you can tell that the sugar has not cooked down into a smooth consistency yet. We have also attached our candy thermometer here to the side onto our pan, and then we have stirred our pecans in, and then once we stir our pecans in, our mixture is going to start a rolling bubble that's pretty intense, which is it's starting to turn up the heat a little bit so that it can turn itself into a caramel. So I don't know if Amy can get a little bit of a close-up in there. And once that starts to happen, we don't want to disturb the caramel anymore. We want to let it come up to the temperature that we're looking for, which is that 240 softball caramel stage. And you can see it's happening pretty quickly. That's why you want to have all those ingredients ready and on deck. And we are already almost up to that 240 stage. And once it gets up, I want to have my sheet pan ready with a little bit of parchment paper on it, or if you had, you know, like a Silpat liner, you could use that as well. And this is where we're gonna put our pralines to set up once we get to that softball caramel stage. I do find that with these thermometers, you kind of have to bend over and look at them to make sure that they are registering to be able to see that blue line, which is creeping its way up to 240 right now. And then I've got 2 spoons. I'm going to dig praline out. I'm going to use my second spoon to push it off onto my parchment paper, and then we'll set those aside in the fridge for a little bit. We'll let those harden for a couple minutes, and then we'll turn our attention back to our red beans and rice, which I have been stirring intermittently. You can see this caramel is pretty bubbly now at this point. And it is almost to that 240 stage. It is right there. And so we're going to take a little bit of this caramel, we're going to dip our spoon in, and we're going to let it drop right into this cold water. And we'll see if it has firmed up enough. So when you do this, you can now pick your caramel up. I should have picked a better glass for that. And I'm touching it to see if it's going to hold its shape in my hand. And it does need to go just a pinch more because it pretty much dissolved. And I think that we are there now. So we'll go ahead and turn that off. Remove our thermometer. Set that off to the side. Give a quick stir to make sure we've got all those pecans stirred up and off the bottom of the pan. And then when you're spooning it out of here, you want to make sure you've got some pecans on every spoonful. They will spread a little bit, but once they harden, that's about what they look like. They should be glossy. You should not be able to see the sugar in its granulated form in the mix. And sometimes if you take your caramel a little bit too far, your pralines will be kind of chalky with like a gray color. Now we do put a lot more pecans into our pralines. I always thought they just needed more nuts when I ate them in New Orleans. So I decided when I start making these, I'm going to put about double the amount of pecans in there. Another way to test this and make sure that they're done would be to have your sheet pan nice and cold. When they receive those pralines, they'll set up almost instantly. As you can see, it makes a pretty healthy amount. I usually get about 20 out of here. We're just going to do 1 sheet pan and leave it at that. They're definitely a very rustic cookie. No two look the same. But they're very rich, they're very sweet, and I think the addition of additional pecans helps with that just a little bit. All right, that's looking pretty good there. So we're gonna go ahead and you can see these are already beginning to set. And we're gonna go ahead and put those into the fridge. And we will revisit those in just a couple minutes. All right, and so now it's time to wrap up our day in Louisiana with our favorite Cajun and Creole dishes. First off, we made our red beans and rice, spooned it into a beautiful dish, little jasmine rice and some bias cut scallions on top, and of course we're going to serve that with a little bit of cornbread. Also, we've got our delicious pralines, those set up just so nicely. They should be a bit chewy, but also a bit crispy, so I think we got those just right. And then I thought, since we're talking about caretakers, it's so nice to have something ready to go in the freezer, because there's just some days where we're too busy caring for others and we don't have time to whip together red beans and rice, even if it is a quickie recipe. So this recipe makes enough to get 4 big servings out of it, or some would say this is even 2 servings here. So today we're going to talk a little bit about freezing as well. So I went ahead and filled my microwave safe and freezer safe containers, which you can buy online or at a local distributor kind of store if you have one of those. And then I put my rice on top of that, my scallions. I'm going to take a little bit of olive oil spray, which just gives this a layer of fat when it goes into the freezer, which protects it from getting that freezer burn. My lid is going to go on top. And if you wrap these now in saran wrap, it'll actually seal the wrap to the outside of the container. Will you grab that for me, Amy? And maybe we can show that today too. And what this will do is combat freezer burn in even a second way. Then when you're ready to eat this, thaw it out 24 hours in advance in your refrigerator. The next day, you can either pour it into a pan and cook it up, or into a microwave safe container like glass that you like, or even these are microwave safe as well. And then you can nuke it in the microwave and have an easy meal in just 5 minutes. I'm gonna put this down on my piece of saran wrap, wrap this around the top, and then again, and the heat from the plastic is actually gonna seal that onto there to where it creates a really nice system for going into the freezer, keeping that lid on tight, sealing all of that air inside, making sure that we don't have freezer burn when we are ready later to have our red beans and rice. So again, this is big enough to make for 2 meals, one for tonight and one for next time. We want to thank you again for stopping in and joining us here in Morton, Illinois for some Louisiana Cajun and Creole cooking, and we'll be back next time. Thanks so much.